Hello everyone, Commonwealth Realm here, once again with Rogersbase, and so I'm going to give the word to you, Roger.
Sure. Well, I think, again, it really all depends on when the presentation ends up happening, right? If it ends up happening in early June, I think we'll probably, unfortunately, see more of Strikers. I think we'll probably get another trailer for Fire Emblem. I think we'll get another trailer for Xenoblade, and then, depending on whether or not there is a separate Splatoon Direct, or if it does end up happening in June versus July, then I think we'll see a pretty sizable amount of Splatoon in this Direct, too. So I think it really just depends on when it gets placed. I think a lot of these games might not show up in any big capacity if it ends up being like a July thing, but if they still do it in June, especially because Pokemon's probably going to do their own thing, as we talked about in that previous video too. I mean, again, Pokemon is its own thing. Bayonetta, obviously, is very likely they could show some of that. I mean, obviously, despite the fact that it's coming out in 2023, they could also focus a huge amount of time on Breath of the Wild. Though part of me feels like that's going to be saved for like a dedicated Zelda Direct. But I think they know people are waiting for more information, and I could definitely see a big, sizable, like 15-minute segment in a Nintendo Direct focused solely on the sequel to Breath of the Wild. New mechanics, more about the story, maybe a solid release date for the spring, like an exact date, a title reveal, things like that. I think that could be their big push if they don't really want to focus too much on stuff that's going to be announced in the near future or released in the near future.
Spring 2023 could mean a lot. It could mean everything from not being spring, that being March 3rd, 2023, so 3/3/2023, right. Which fits a lot with the themes of combinations, 3 layers, and 3 main characters, 3 goddesses.
The Triforce, exactly.
What I'm thinking here is that Nintendo is very clever and want to, in many ways, tie the marketing to that with that number, because it's just fitting too perfectly. It's exactly 6 years after Breath of the Wild came out. The numbers have lined up like it couldn't be better. We're going to be happy even without the release date this summer, because we only want the title of the game.
Yeah, or gameplay. Literally just anything. I think even just beyond the title, even if they still don't want to show us the title, if we get a little bit more gameplay, we see some more gameplay mechanics, maybe get a little bit more about the story, I mean, I'll be happy, and I think a lot of other people will be satisfied too.
What I think is going to happen is that this year, to fill out the delays, we're going to see a couple of ports, remakes, and remasters. And for Zelda, I see 2 options. Like there's been a lot of talk about the dual pack of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess in one. I really don't think that will happen. The reason is Nintendo knows all too well that those 2 games can be sold $60.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's my main reason why I don't think we're gonna get a dual pack. From listening to Reggie, I know that Nintendo hates to bundle things, and Nintendo of America had to really pressure to even have Wii Sports bundled with the Wii back in the day. And we know how crucial of a decision that was. In Japan, it wasn't bundled.
Right.
At least not in the beginning. That just shows the differences here is that when Nintendo is developing something and they know that they can sell it for a profit, they're not gonna bundle it together. That's why you don't see these type of bundles anymore, except for games that are old and that they didn't really bother to upgrade that much. Like 3D All-Stars Mario Collection is a very good example of that. They did very little to upgrade those games, right. And then it was okay to sell for $60. But when it came to Skyward Sword, that was also a game that was remastered, $60 alone. I think it's going to be the exact same with Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, and I feel like they want to split up those games for another reason, namely that they have remakes, remasters, and ports for the coming 3 to 4 years, because it's going to be a long wait after Breath of the Wild 2 is out.
I could maybe see Grezzo working on something in the style of Link's Awakening, potentially like a remake game of Oracle of Seasons, or like even a new mini kind of Zelda game, something along the lines of like a Triforce Heroes. I wouldn't completely write off not having like some type of Zelda thing this holiday season. I think you're right. I think they want to do sort of like a lead up for Breath of the Wild, but obviously they can't release that this holiday season. They're waiting for March of next year. So maybe like a small remake, or maybe a bundle of like a ports of the 3DS games, like, the remakes of Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, maybe something like that. But yeah, I'm right there with you that I don't think we're getting Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD in a bundle pack at this point. I think that will end up being, separate packages if they do ever end up doing that. One other thing, though, I would like to bring up that is completely unrelated to Zelda, but it's something that, like, the closer we're sort of getting to the end of the year and the more we know about their release timeline, the more I feel pretty strongly about this. I think there's probably a big fan favorite type game that's coming later this year that's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't necessarily know like what that means, but I'm talking something along the lines of like an F-Zero or a Kid Icarus. Because if you look at their lineup and you look at the things that are releasing in 2023 already, I think there's like a perfect slot for something that really appeals to the hardcore demographic on Switch in a way that Pokemon might not necessarily. Obviously, there's a lot of crossover between those of us who are like quote unquote hardcore Nintendo fans and people who are Pokemon fans naturally. But I think really Nintendo can heavily rely on Pokemon pushing that mainstream demographic and getting them to get Switches this holiday season.
Mario Kart is obviously turning 30 years old this year. It's happening in August. So I see two windows for the announcement of the second DLC pack, which obviously is going to have SNES tracks because the first DLC pack did not have any SNES tracks.
I completely agree. Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's going to be the little thing to spice up one of the two. But I think in order to really give something to the hardcore that isn't just what we're all expecting, right? Like a remake or a port, like the rumored Metroid Prime port or, the Wind Waker HD thing or whatever. I really think they're working on something that is like a fan favorite title that they're going to release this fall. And I don't know what that is. I couldn't even begin to guess, but I would say something along the lines of like an F-Zero or a Kid Icarus that really people aren't expecting.
So it's obvious that Nintendo is sticking to a plan here. And that plan is to finish the marketing cycle for the games that are coming out this spring.
Of which there are a lot still. We got Strikers and Fire Emblem and Xenoblade and then Splatoon in September. So, I mean, those are 4 big titles back to back. I don't think they necessarily need, especially in a year with Pokemon, anything more than like 1 or 2 for the hardcore.
This Direct will definitely have one at least, new game announcement. And just as you said, the Kid Icarus, maybe F-Zero revival. I will just call it one revival, and then we're going to have one natural successor. And I really think the natural successor is going to be Fire Emblem.
Yes,
they are
agreed.
Finishing up the Three Houses, Three Hopes arc now, so they will be ready to reveal the next Fire Emblem. I'm not sure if it's going to come out this year though, but I think it's going to be revealed this summer. So It could be another spring, summer next year title, because I just feel like 2022 is so filled up, and the only thing that can fit here is a Zelda remake and that left field announcement that you mentioned. And
right.
Much also depends on if Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope can make it, say, for a December release.
That too, yeah. We still don't know the exact date for that, and I could see them easily slotting that into the fall too. Yeah, I'm right there with you that I think the mainline Fire Emblem's still on the way. We know it's on the way. It's just a matter of when they're going to end up announcing it. Yeah, that really just depends on when this Direct happens. Because if it happens in early June around the time of E3 and Summer Games Fest, then I don't necessarily know if they would announce that in this. That would maybe be something they would save for like a fall Direct for an early 2023 release, just because I can't imagine them wanting to release 2 Fire Emblem games in the same year. But then again, if they've been sitting on it for so long and it's going to play much differently than a Warriors game will, it might not hurt them to have that. But I don't know. I think it would be odd to have that announcement in the same Direct while one is still on the way. People already complain about too many Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers, so I could already see, the armchair warriors saying, too many Fire Emblem games in this Direct. Now, obviously, I would be thrilled. I'm Mr. Fire Emblem, so I'd be very happy with just a Fire Emblem blowout, Xenoblade, and then a trailer for Breath of the Wild, but I think there is more to whatever this Summer Direct than that. One other thing I'm thinking about, too, that I think would be a real thing to throw at the fans, maybe not necessarily something we're getting anytime soon, and certainly not a release date, maybe beyond late next year or early 2024 or something. I do actually feel like pretty strongly that the time is potentially right for a trailer for Metroid Prime 4. Recently there was that concept art that dropped on the Retro Studios Twitter page, so obviously they've been making progress with it, and I think by this point, because when did they restart development? It was early 2020, right? 2019. Yeah, so I think by this point they probably do have something to show. Even if it's not gameplay, even if it's just like a story trailer or something like that, I could definitely see the one more thing for the Summer Direct being a trailer for Metroid Prime 4, because we already know Breath of the Wild is on the way, and I think they would want to dedicate a big portion of it to the sequel to Breath of the Wild. And so people wouldn't expect that as like one final announcement, but I think showing a trailer for Metroid Prime 4 when obviously that was announced so long ago and we've all been, craving information for it. I think now might be the right time to do it. Again, it might not be a full gameplay demo. It might not be an information about a release date or anything like that, but I do think now is probably the time for it if they're going to do it.
I think the timing is right. They are going to say, it's coming, but first play the remake of Metroid Prime. It's been so long, the rumors have been circulating for that thing. And when a rumor goes on for this long and resurfaces time and time again, it's just like with Skyward Sword.
Yeah, Skyward Sword HD situation, totally.
The more I've been thinking about it, the more it makes sense. Because it's the 20th anniversary of the first Metroid Prime game. And I think that Retro Studios needed a project to sort of work alongside Metroid Prime 4, just to get into the groove. They have combined probably what was found in the original GameCube game with what was found in the trilogy version, which was more motion-based, and found a good compromise that will fit.
Yeah, have the option to switch between the two of them. Totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm in complete agreement, right? That they could do, I think, yeah, we talked about this earlier too. It's like, that's something I expect at this point, right? Like, I think we all sort of expect that if they're going to flesh out their lineup for this holiday season, I don't think it's going to be the mainline Fire Emblem. I think that's probably a game for next year, even if it does end up getting announced. I don't see it being a Mario game at this point because, again, we've got the Mario Kart DLC, we've got Mario and Rabbids, and the Mario movie got pushed. There's always a possibility for Donkey Kong. It still is kind of weird. There were those pretty strong rumors like a year and a half ago that there was a Donkey Kong game in development in Tokyo, and then nothing ever really came of that. But I think it's much more realistic to imagine that it's like there's going to have a remake game, something like Metroid Prime, or some easy ports, maybe along the lines of like Wind Waker HD, and then have that one big fan favorite kind of game, which I guess maybe could Donkey Kong fit in that? I don't know. Donkey Kong kind of feels like it's a little bit more mainstream than an F-Zero or a Kid Icarus or something like that. I feel like that's got more mass appeal, which is maybe what Nintendo would want. But I guess traditionally, the really hardcore Nintendo fans also really do like the Donkey Kong Country games. But the rumor about the Donkey Kong game wasn't the rumor that it was a 3D Donkey Kong game. So I mean, I don't know. That's kind of up in the air too. But I could also see them announcing a Donkey Kong instead of that fan favorite thing I was talking about too.
Yeah, like with Donkey Kong, it's been a very long time since we had a new game. It's longer than even Zelda. And I'm sitting with the feeling that Nintendo is just trying to figure out what to do with Donkey Kong, and by saying that, they probably already have figured out. The game is under development, but it's hidden very well. They want to make it a surprise because it's probably a new chapter for Donkey Kong. One that maybe blends a little bit together of the styles of Country and the one we saw of Donkey Kong 64, which I think would be a perfect combination, because the main issue with Donkey Kong 64 back on the Nintendo 64 was the rare mentality of having way too many collectibles, and they went completely overboard with that idea in Donkey Kong 64, which was the main reason why people felt like this was even more collectathon than Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. That put people off, but if you can balance that better, I think we could be talking about one of the best Donkey Kong projects ever made.
Definitely, and this seems to be the year of their 2D platformers getting 3D iterations, right? We got that with Kirby earlier this year too, so, who's to say maybe Donkey Kong's not going to get the same treatment?
Yeah, and the thing we also cannot forget is that King K. Rool has been brought in a lot through the Smash marketing.
Yes.
Joining in as a character, then being a part of the big Banjo announcement back at E3 2019. I'm really sitting with the feeling that when we get a new Donkey Kong game, and if it is this year, King K. Rool is going to be back as the main antagonist, and now for good.
Maybe then that is your fan favorite kind of announcement, right? Is that it's not necessarily that the game itself is like a niche project, but the character is somebody that like hardcore Nintendo fans have loved for such a long time. He's got the resurgence for Smash Brothers, and for them to show like, oh, this is a new Donkey Kong game with K. Rool as the villain again. Yeah, I think that could actually fit along the lines of that, prediction of like something like an F-Zero or a Kid Icarus. Because again, Donkey Kong, when I think about it, is a very mainstream franchise for Nintendo, but re-implementing, I should say, King K. Rool back into it could definitely fit that idea that I've got in my head of what I think they're aiming for their release this holiday.
Sooner or later, we might see a new Diddy Kong Racing also.
I would love that.
Because I think it's going to be a while until we see the next Mario Kart. By having finally maybe realizing the concept of Donkey Kong Racing that was scrapped as soon as Microsoft bought Rareware back in the day, in the beginning of the GameCube days, I think would be a very good example of games that Nintendo had to scrap in that era, just like Metroid Dread, and now return to them like 20 years later. And that's why in the next video we'll be talking a lot about Zelda and how Nintendo in many ways changed the plan, but for extending the life cycle of the Switch. So be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to both of our channels, Common Wolf Realm and Rogersbase, so we will see you in the next one.